Hello again and welcome to the September meeting of the Council, and welcome back those who joined us from the earlier extraordinary meeting. There are several announcements to make this evening, including some procedural matters and a number of pieces of good news. But first, are there any apologies? Councillor Graves?
Councillor Evans and Councillor A.J. Graves.
Press? Any declarations of interest? Anybody declaring an interest in sewage or anything? No? Good. We'll now approve the last meeting. Somebody move the minutes, please. Councillor Barker, are they seconded? Councillor Pearce, thank you. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Anybody against? Thank you. All right. To item 4 then. Before making my announcements, I have some procedural matters to deal with. Firstly, I've agreed to the consideration of a late item relating to the use of capital receipts following a referral from the Council Cabinet meeting that took place last Wednesday. I understand that Democratic Services have circulated the minute extract in advance of this meeting. Secondly, due to the additional bank holiday, the publication of this evening's agenda was required 24 hours earlier than originally anticipated. In normal circumstances, the deadline for submission of public questions would also be brought forward to coincide with the publication of the agenda. However, I've chosen to exercise my discretion to allow questions received up until midday on Tuesday, the 13th of September, to be included in the booklet. These questions are not listed on your agenda front sheet. A very large number of public questions received this evening, and the Council Constitution places a limit of 30 minutes on their consideration. I would therefore ask all public questioners to be concise when asking their supplementary questions to give everyone a fair opportunity to have their questions heard. We met earlier this evening to share our reflections on the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and wish His Majesty well for his reign. I'd like to take this opportunity to add my thanks to the colleagues from across the Council and partner organisations for the speed, coordination and professionalism with which Operation London Bridge was implemented. The planning and preparation that had been undertaken in anticipation of this solemn occasion has allowed people in Derby to fully participate in this moment of national significance. Earlier in the month, I was delighted to receive a letter from UNESCO confirming that Derby had been successful in its application to become part of the United Nations Global Network of Learning Cities. Derby becomes one of around 200 cities in 40 countries who are united in their determination to promote lifelong learning and sustainable development within their administrative areas. UNESCO defines a learning city as one that mobilises its resources in every sector to promote inclusive learning from basic to higher education in families, communities, the workplace and educational settings. Congratulations to those involved in this terrific achievement. Last month, I was pleased to receive correspondence from the Derby branch of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, thanking the Council for the support it has offered to the Ukrainian community in Derby since the outbreak of war in February this year. In particular, the letter referenced the establishment of a welcome centre for Ukrainian refugees at the Association's Charnwood Street premises and the attendance of councillors at a peace march held in recognition of Ukrainian Independence Day on the 20th of August. I was present myself. Councillors will recall that the resolution passed at our February meeting, and I hope that we can continue to support the Ukrainian community as they deal with the ongoing consequences of Russia's illegal war, of which we've heard even worse news today. Finally, I'm saddened to report on the passing of Mrs. Marilyn Thompson, who was a member of the Council's Independent Schools Admissions Appeals Panel. Marilyn volunteered for several years following her retirement from the bench. She will be fondly remembered for her wry sense of humour and dedication to her role. I'd like to place on record this Council's thanks for her service to young people in Derby and pass our condolences to her family. Item 5 is statements by members of the Council Cabinet, and I understand none have been received. Takes us to item 6. We'll hear the questions from members of the public to Cabinet members and committee chairs. We received 27 in total, although some have been grouped together as they are on similar topics. Where a written response has already been provided in the booklet, we will hear a summary of the question from an officer before inviting each member of the public to ask their supplementary question. As I mentioned earlier, please be concise with your questions and responses to allow us to proceed with the business of the meeting. And the first one is to Councillor Poulter. Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are questions from Julie Brandon, R. Lewis, Mayor Perkins, Lucy Giuliano and Vanessa Boone relating to the Council's implementation of the resolution of May 2022 in relation to the socio-economic duty, including the adoption of an action plan, measures to reduce fuel poverty, consultation with partner organisations and groups named in the resolution, and measures to reduce the life expectancy gap between the richest and poorest in Derby. All 5 of the questioners are entitled to ask a supplementary question. I believe the first one, who is, I believe Mayor Perkins has nominated Adrian Howlett to ask a supplementary question on her behalf. Adrian, I believe, is here this evening.
Thank you. Shall we take them in turn, though? Julie Brandon, do you wish to?
I don't believe Julie Brandon or R. Lewis are in attendance.
All right, okay. So it's the person speaking for Mayor Perkins. Do you wish to ask a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor. To successfully address the vital concern of both reducing carbon emissions and poverty, metrics and key performance indicators are necessary. Do you have metrics on the scale of the challenge and progress against the KPIs?
Councillor Poulter.
Thank you for the question, Adrian. I'm with you in that carbon reduction and socio-economic factors are equally relevant. I don't have the figures that you asked for hand, but I'm sure we can get them to you very quickly.
Thank you. Is Lucy Giuliano present? Thank you. And Vanessa Boone, do you have a supplementary, Vanessa? Please state it.
Thank you, contacting domestic abuse charities. In a report from Women's Aid, identified 96% of domestic abuse victims say that abuse has been worsening amid the cost of living crisis, specifically adding extra pressure, with 73% saying they can't afford to leave. Therefore, they are stuck in their unsafe homes. This challenge is exacerbated especially for victims who are women by the gender pay and finance gap. Given the Council's motion to adopt the socio-economic duty back in May, which was passed, what is the Council doing to address this specific need to meet this increased demand and to address this through provision of accommodation, tackling the already oversubscribed refuges that have been turning women and children away when they flee violence, and local charities who have been struggling to stay afloat to help these very victims, to prevent keeping victims trapped in these abusive homes due to deprivation?
Thank you. Councillor Poulter.
Yeah, thank you for the supplementary. The connection between domestic violence and socio-economic pressures on the family is more and more well known and recognised. We're making strides in terms of domestic violence and the issues that you refer to around difficulties with accommodation. It's been mentioned both at the Partnership Board recently and the Health and Wellbeing Board as to being a significant factor, and it will form part of the Council's action plan to address socio and economic issues. So watch this space.
Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question B is from Greg Semraj to Councillor Hassel. What plans are there to improve Sinfin Lane in relation to priority given to pedestrians, cycling safety and damage caused by turning vehicles?
Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Semzak? Raj? Nope, not. Is he here? Not here. Okay, move on then.
Apologies, Mr Mayor. Question C is from Simon Bacon to Councillor Jerry Pearce. What information will be circulated to residents to promote recycling and when will this take place?
I'm sure you have a supplementary, Mr. Bacon. There you are. Yeah.
New kit. Oh, there we go.
Button.
Oh, a bit more of my council tax spent. Can I just ask that the public can have a paper copy of the public questions? Because I've arrived tonight and I was told I've got to really read it online, and I don't think that's acceptable. I want a paper copy that I can take away and write on. So I noticed you've all got a copy, so it's really important that the public...
I'm not sure that's environmentally
I
reasonable.
Well,
I think
I can see a copy. I can just see a copy there, that's all.
If we wasted paper. But Mr. Bacon,
but if you
do you wish to put a supplementary to the question?
I have. I'm just trying to kill time because I can't find my question. Right. I've got one, but Sassy would like a copy. Thank you. Thank you, Baggy. Yeah, it's not very much, is it? So don't worry. Right. Right. Thanks very much for your reply, Councillor Pearce. Will you be providing the information to the many city streets that the council removed recycling from in an attempt to inspire those residents to sign up for your Sign Up Blue Bin service? If not, will you do a new leaflet drop on that subject to those specifically? Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Yes, we will be, Simon, and I've got a copy of the recycling leaflets going in for you. I printed it off especially for you, mate. There you go. Thank you.
Question D, Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question D is from Tony Mott, again to Councillor Jerry Pearce. It is, please could the Cabinet member provide an update on measures to prevent cars parking in the cycle lane on Duffield Road outside St Benedict's School?
And do you have a supplementary, Mr. Mott? Press the button and...
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I've not heard the response yet.
The response is written, it's a question that should have been supplied to you.
I thought you were going to read out the response. Okay. Yeah, but anyway, I have got...
Do you wish to put a supplementary question?
I have got a supplementary question. It was based on the response, but there may be no easy solution, which is what was said in the response, but 5 years is a long time for the cycle lane to be unfit for use. The parking in the lane isn't short term. I've personally seen cars parked for 45 minutes, forcing cyclists into a line of traffic already narrowed by the presence of the cycle lane. Completion of St Mary's won't change St Benedict's parents parking in the cycle lane, and the active travel proposals are taking too long. My supplementary question is, what is the problem with short-term parking on side roads instead of blocking the cycle lane?
Councillor Pearce.
Thanks for your question, Mr. Mott. I am working with traffic officers to resolve this, and hopefully I can get back to you in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Question E, Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question E is from Russell Armstrong to Councillor Jerry Pearce. Does the council monitor emissions from cellular data towers, and if not, who does?
Do you have a question, Mr. Armstrong? Supplement.
Does anyone at the council actually know what the safe limits are set at? And do they care if these levels are actually exceeded?
Councillor Pearce.
Mr Armstrong, as the relevant answer says, Ofcom is responsible for managing the use of the radio spectrum in the UK, so they monitor all the radio levels. Thank you.
Question F, Alex.
And do you care if the levels are exceeded?
Question F is, when will the Green Board be operational? And that's from Ruth Coates to Councillor Hassel.
Ms Coates, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah. Considering it has been 3 years since the Council declared a climate emergency and the previous Climate Commission has been ineffective for 2 years, what assurances can you give us that the Green Board, with a wider remit, will actually show a commitment to achieving net zero in Derby by putting specific carbon reducing measures in place and not just be used to further greenwashers?
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Ruth. Reassurances that I and this council have delivered on the council's climate strategy. We're in charge of that as well for the Green Board, and I will make it happen. That's my promise to you.
Question G, Alex.
Question G is from Birkin Celebi to Councillor Webb. Will the council commit to no evictions of council tenants as a result of inability to pay rent in light of the recent commitment to the socio-economic duty?
Do you have a supplementary? Birkin Celebi? Not here? Okay, we'll move on then to question H.
Question H is from Claire Woods to Councillor Jerry Pearce. The question is, where have the trees used in the Forest for the Future project been reallocated?
And do you have a supplementary, Ms Wood?
I'm asking Claire's question for her. In view of the fact that we are in a climate emergency, and as this summer has demonstrated, city centres will become hotter and therefore more unattractive to shoppers, will these trees be relocated within the city centre and other Derby streets to provide shade for people, thereby benefiting businesses as well as shoppers due to the increased footfall?
Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Miss Wood. You're not Miss Wood. I know you're not. I've got that one wrong. You're Wood. All of the suggestions for where the trees are going to be going, we've got all those. We're all going to look at them. The initial purpose was going to put them on a certain park or parks. But yes, suggestions have been had for the city centre and for streets as well. So we're all looking at all suggestions. Thank you.
Question I, Alex.
Question I is from Pauline Inwood to Councillor Barker. There are questions relating to the Derby and Derbyshire Pension Fund, including the size of the fund, Derby City Council's share of it, the percentage invested in fossil fuels, and what is being done to transition investments to sustainable energy developments and technologies.
Do you have a supplementary, Pauline?
Yes, please. Thank you for this considerably more helpful and comprehensive answer than that received at the last council meeting. My follow-up question concerns the 2050 target to achieve a portfolio of assets with net zero carbon emissions. In view of the rapidly worsening climate crisis nationally and globally, don't you think that we must set a target much, much sooner than that?
Councillor Barker.
Yes, thank you for your supplementary question. Quite simply, the finances of the pension scheme are complex, very complex. As you can see from the answer, we are looking at nearly a £30 billion fund, all told, which includes the county council as well. It takes time to, in actual fact, move funds over and go through every fund that we hold to ensure that we are doing our best to reduce our reliance on companies that have dealings with fossil fuels. Again, the answer suggests that whilst we've moved towards that, those same companies are in actual fact moving themselves to a position where they are reducing their carbon reliance. And so therefore, one has to give a reasonable time for that change to take place. Otherwise, many people in Derbyshire will suffer financially from a decimation of the fund. But in the interim, as I say, whilst we're in the game, we are trying to ensure, and so our Derbyshire County Council, trying to ensure that we reduce that as much as possible. 2050 is a target, an unattainable target. If it comes before, well, we'll all be happy.
Thank you. Question J, Alex.
Question J is from Sally Austin to Councillor Smale. What steps are being taken to address higher rates of financial difficulty amongst disabled people in relation to the predicted impact of energy bills, including facing additional health risks due to cold conditions in their homes? I don't believe Sally Austin is here, so with your permission I'll move straight to question K, which is from Sassy Stark to Councillor Webb. How is data being collected in work to tackle houses in multiple occupation in Arboretum Ward?
Stark.
Yes, I do. Firstly, I want to just point out that the context in the answer is incorrect. It states that currently HMO guidance, permitted developments, covers up to 5 beds, where it actually covers up to 6 beds. So 7 or more is what it should be. 7 or more bedrooms would require planning permission.
Okay, we can take that on board. Can you put your supplementary question?
There is also a statement that says there's a growing market in the city for houses of multiple occupancy, but it doesn't mention the fact that the Arboretum ward has a high amount of overcrowding.
I must move you to a question, please.
Of course, yes. My question is, how do we have confidence in the study, in how it will be carried out? Because from this statement, I would say it seems skewed against Article 4. Even though it's a study that looks like it's looking into putting Article 4 in place, there's a lot of subtext there that would indicate that the intention to put Article 4 in place is not genuine.
Councillor Webb.
The substance of this is that we are looking at Article 4. We are looking at it cross-party, and that requires evidence. If we need to go to Article 4, then we need the evidence to be put forward to the Secretary of State. So it will be done in conjunction with local members, and local members will be able to make the input into this work along with our planning officers, so that if we do apply for Article 4, then that would be clearly evidence, so there is little chance of pushback.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Question L.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question L is from Paul Tice to Councillor Smale, although I understand Mr. Tice has nominated Mr. Andrew Picken to ask his question on his behalf. The question is, what actions were taken and by whom to decide not to undertake additional research requested by Historic England in relation to Alastry Golf Course?
Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Picken?
I do, sir, yes. I'm disappointed in the response suggesting the research is not of value to the council, because there is an identical venue in Buckinghamshire with the same historic provenance as Alastry Hall and its golf course. It was also a municipal facility.
Let's press you to a question, please.
Absolutely. That sold in May 2021 for £57 million. This golf course could be operated in an environmentally sound manner. It could, with a little additional research, become the first ever in the UK to have its own designated historic landscape.
Can we have a question, please?
Absolutely, sir. Why not revisit that decision, as to do so will increase the attractiveness of Alastry Hall to prospective bidders, providing the best opportunity to save it from further decay and give the city a free windfall?
Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Tice. I don't believe that there is any intention from this administration to revisit the decision on the sale of Alistree Hall, apart from the building itself, but the rewidening of Alistree Park will be proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, question M, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question M is from Adrian Howlett to Councillor Webb. What is the council doing to help residents manage their energy consumption heading into winter, including options to reduce building heat losses through insulation and draft proofing?
Mr. Howlett here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Would you like to ask a supplementary?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Hassel, for your detailed response, especially focused on the social and the rented sectors. For private homeowners in Derby, has the council considered providing targeted information, such as leaflets through letterboxes, based on the council's detailed knowledge of our housing stock? For example, specific targeted leaflets based on Derby homes with solid walls, ones with 1950s type cavity walls, etc. Thank you.
Is this Councillor Webb rather than Councillor Hassel? Yep.
Can I say that on the solid wall insulation that we have worked with Derby Homes and also council properties that went into private ownership under the right to buy and have insulated those, and I think the term is wimpy, no fines buildings through a recent government grant. That work is yet to be completed, but there are a good number of houses that have been worked on with this to improve insulation.
Thank you. Councillor Webb. Question N, Alex.
Question N is from Mayor Perkins to Councillor Hassel. I believe that Mr. Adrian Howard will again be asking the supplementary question. That question is, why is Derby City Council not withdrawing support for National Highways plans to fell thousands of trees around Kingsway and Markeaton Island as part of planned improvements to the A38 and failing to assess the cumulative impact of carbon emissions?
Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Howlett?
Yes, on behalf of Maya. The out-of-date local transport plan from 2011 has not been updated, and so it obviously does not consider the council's declared climate emergency nor the net zero targets. The current plan also envisions opening up the west of Derby to rampant house building. How can the council support a road expansion and tell us that these are not simple issues when something as basic as a valid local transport plan does not exist?
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you for your question. As previously advised, this is a National Highways project and not something the council has any influence on. Thank you.
Thank you. Question O, Alex.
Question O is from Simon Bacon to Councillor Jerry Pearce. Are there plans to expand the number of waste materials accepted for recycling with the new recycling contract at Rainsway Household Waste Recycling Centre starting in October?
Any supplementary, Mr. Bacon?
I have, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thanks for your response, Councillor Pearce. I'm pleased to hear of the plan for the reuse shop on site at Rainsway and the new materials to be accepted. I specifically used plastic film material as an example, which you didn't refer to, noting that even some supermarkets take a restricted range of plastic films now. Why won't you commit to recycling plastic film which blights the city? Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Simon. Can I get back to you on that one? I'll have a word with our guys down at Rainsway and I'll get back in touch with the reasons why. Thanks.
Question P, Alex.
Question P is from Lucy Giuliano to Councillor Hassel. What are the views of the Cabinet member on the dangers of cycling in Derby and the need for improved cycling infrastructure to enable active travel?
Ms. Giuliano, have a supplement?
Yes, I do, yes. While I appreciate your answer, the best way to truly experience what it is like to cycle on our streets is to ride on them. So I would like to invite both Councillor Hassel and all other councillors to join the upcoming Kiddicall Mass ride. Kiddicall Mass is a global movement calling for safer streets for our children. Together we cycle a fun, family-friendly route through the city centre as a big group. This weekend, hundreds of cities across the world will be cycling, including our twin city, Osnabrück. We will be meeting at 11 a.m. outside the Council House this Sunday and finishing at Cathedral Green. So may I please ask, by show of hands, how many councillors will be coming along? Thank you.
You can't do that, but you can ask Councillor Hassel to respond. Sounds like fun on Sunday.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, I would very much love to have come this Sunday. I am actually taking my mother out this Sunday, and I dare not phone that. But I have seen your video. I will get officers to respond directly to you and see what we can do in the interim.
Thank you. Question Q, Alex.
Question Q is from Vanessa Boone to Councillor Smale. Noting that Derby is among the 20 most deprived areas nationally, what resources have been allocated and what targets have been set to improve Derby's performance on the index of multiple deprivation?
Do you have a supplementary, Ms Boone?
Yes, thank you for the answer, which confirms that Derby has no target to improve its performance on the index of multiple deprivation. We've also seen this recurring theme on the other answers on the socio-economic duty tonight, vague ideas of it's being looked at, it's being mentioned, there's a group. So to help the council to make more progress, I have a resource to share with you. There's a charity called Just Fair, which offers training for councillors and policymakers on how to actually implement the socio-economic duty and how to do a meaningful analysis of the impact on its decisions, its budget allocation and its policies upon people who have the least in the city. This has helped good practice in other cities that we can draw upon, which I think the people of Derby deserve. For example, the City of York Council has a financial inclusion
please, Ms Boone.
steering group certainly of £300,000 it distributes in hardship loans and crisis funding. My question is, will the councillors here in Derby honour the motion that was passed in May to actually implement a socio-economic duty by taking up the Just Fair training to enable us to actually implement it and make some progress? Thank you.
Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much, Ms Boone. Of course, we'll look into all of the options, and thanks for sharing some of that intel that you provided there. We're obviously, of course, happy to feed you into the conversations that are taking place when the strategy, of course, has been developed and is obviously constantly developing, and we'll make sure that you're involved and that we can support everyone together in this city. Thank you.
Question R, Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question R is from Russell Armstrong to Councillor Jerry Pearce. When are the council proposing to resurface the road around Ridgeway?
Supplementary, Mr Armstrong.
Councillor answered giving no real dates for when assessments are going to be made. So can I ask for the councillor to give us some dates, please, when that assessment will be carried out?
Councillor Pearce.
Mr Armstrong, all of the roads in the city are assessed on a 3, 6, 9 and 12-month basis. It's too long-winded this evening to go into the full process of our qualified highways inspectors of how they assess the roads. I cannot give you a date for any particular road in the city when they are going to assess it, but they do assess it on a regular period. Thank you.
Question S, Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't believe Mr Birkin-Celebi is here this evening, but for the record, his question was, how does the council view the problem of inadequacy of waste collection and street cleaning in the city, particularly in more deprived areas? Question T is from Pauline Inwood to Councillor Hassel. Can the Cabinet member provide assurance that Derby's contribution to the Derbyshire and Derby Minerals local plans will robustly oppose any attempts to allow fracking in Derbyshire?
Do you have a supplementary question, Pauline?
Yes, please. So you have confirmed that Derby City Council do have input to the Derby and Derbyshire Mineral Plan, and we can be sure that county residents will be asking similar questions at county council meetings. But please, can you answer the question I asked, which is, will you assure us that our elected reps on the Joint Advisory Committee will robustly oppose any attempts to allow fracking anywhere in the county?
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you for the question. It would be remiss of me to withdraw any sort of plan for any sort of sustainable or independent energy means at this time, during this time of energy crisis. Also, I will guarantee you that if that decision does come to us, we will review it in the most rigorous way.
Thank you. Question U from Sally Austin again.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. Question U, I believe, is from Sassy Stark to Councillor Webb. Does the council know the total number of HMOs in Derby, including those with fewer than 5 bed spaces?
Right. Beg your pardon. Sassy, do you have a supplementary?
I do, yes. I would just like to ask, How will the council know which areas to identify for the study if they don't know where small HMOs are?
Councillor Webb.
We've identified an area which is Arboretum where this work will be carried out. So that is the area. If it proves productive, then it will go citywide.
Thank you. Question W.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I believe there might be an error in your script, so my apologies for that. One of the questions was amalgamated with another, so it's question V, which is Adrian Howlett to Councillor Hassel. Does the council have a scheme to encourage and support local business to deliver home retrofit services to Derby homeowners, landlords and businesses?
Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Howlett?
Yes, I do, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hassel, for your answer. Does the Buy with Confidence scheme that you referred to have tools within it to help non-expert homeowners identify what trades they need and what local businesses can help? Thank you.
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you. Yes, we hope to advise people directly in plain English on what they can do best for their own businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless anybody knows different, that concludes those questions. Thank you. I don't know if people are leaving the chamber. I might give them a moment to do so.
So everything's out by once, so it should be W.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
Do you want me to quickly mark one up?
Don't worry.
This is correct.
Doesn't matter. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm given to understand that the answers to those questions was available to the questioners 45 minutes before the start of this meeting. So if there was any doubt about that, that's the information I'm given. But I think if somebody does raise a point like right, item 7, understand there's been nothing received on the fire and Derby homes. Question item 8, members from non-council cabinet members. Not sure where the hyphen should be there, and we've received 20. Somebody's given me a list of the wrong ones. Oh, I see. The first is W, and that's from Councillor Graves. Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Graves' question to Councillor Jerry Pearce is, does the Cabinet member feel that the pricing structure for membership at Moorways Pool is too high in the current economic climate and is discouraging lower income residents from learning to swim?
Letter X.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Prosser's question to Councillor Pearce is, were travellers offered free access to Moorways Pool when residing on Osmaston Park recently?
Councillor Prosser, do you have a supplementary?
Did you check if any other council organisations maybe offered these passes? Because it is my understanding that something did exist.
Councillor Pearce?
I've actually spoken, I've had a meeting with Everyone Active and our leisure team this afternoon, Tim, and they've assured me that none of the travellers got it free. So yeah, if you find out, if you can find out any details, I will check for you.
Thank you. Question Y.
Question Y is from Councillor Cuss to Councillor Jerry Pearce. How many streets in Alveston has the council targeted regarding bins left on streets?
Councillor Cuss, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for your reply, Councillor Pearce. I'm a bit disappointed to see that other streets are not being targeted, that myself and other ward councillors have highlighted to be a big problem in the area, with bins being left on streets for many years. If I email you these streets, can these be added to the list?
Councillor Pearce.
The answer to that is yes. I was just about to say yes, Kirk. Yeah, just send me an email. Yeah, thanks.
Question Z from Councillor Lind.
Councillor Lynn's question to Councillor Williams is how many educational psychologist locums have worked for Derby City Council and how many hours of work have been completed since February 2022?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Lynn?
I do, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your response. Following my questions to yourself at full council on the 24th of November 2021, you informed us that locum educational psychologists have been commissioned to secure timeliness by the end of January 2022 as a short-term plan, and that the service was in development to ensure that the statutory duties is met efficiently again without delay. Please, can you tell us what went wrong and when the authority's statutory duties will, in actual fact, be met efficiently again? Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can tell you that nothing went wrong from the City Council's point of view. What is in actual fact happening is a national issue in terms of educational psychologists and the ability to recruit educational psychologists. So whilst we have that issue ongoing, we will continue to use locums where we have to use locums to actually meet those statutory duties.
Thank you. Question AA.
Question AA is from Councillor Kerr to Councillor Pearce. They are questions relating to waste and recycling, including the number of weekly complaints received about black and blue bins not being emptied, how many of those complaints relate to apartment blocks, and what is being done to reduce the number of complaints.
Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary? Thank you. Go on to BB from Councillor Whitby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Whitby's question to Councillor Williams is how many staff vacancies are there currently across departments comprising children and young people, not including schools?
Councillor Whitby, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. The supplementary is how many of those 73.4 FTE are being covered by agency staff?
Councillor Williams.
So I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but what I can tell you in terms of agency workers for our social workers, I can tell you we are at the lowest that we have been for a very, very long time at 8. And again, the ongoing recruitment of social workers continues. We have an open recruitment for those social workers and we'll continue to do that whilst ever we can do that. So we aim to get that down, but we do not have any social worker agency managers, so that is all covered by our full-time staff.
Thank you. Question CC.
Question is from Councillor Dinser to Councillor Pearce. How many of the 2021-22 Neighbourhood Board ward priorities have been delivered by highways and how many have been rolled over into the following year?
You have a supplementary, Councillor Dinser.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Pearce, I know and I've been told by the officers that the full list has not been printed here, so it's difficult to ask a supplementary. But when I get the full list, I will get back to you on that.
That's not a supplementary. Okay. Question DD.
Question DD is from Councillor Hazelgrave to Councillor Williams. To what extent will the council be giving financial help to maintain schools to assist with energy bills?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hazelgrave?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your written response, Councillor, which has been superseded by government announcements today in which all schools' energy bills will be supported. There remains a very pressing question as to whether the maintained and academy schools will be supported financially in meeting the Teachers' Pay Award for 2022. Will you be writing to the relevant Secretaries of State urging them to also help with this major element of schools' budgets?
Councillor Williams.
Done.
Question EE.
Question EE is from Councillor Jangir Khan to Councillor Jerry Pearce. What progress has been made on the tree maintenance work planned for this municipal year?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Khan?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you for your reply. Some of my constituents in Normanton Ward raised concerns about the trees in the streets which are damaging their properties. They have approached the council a number of times without any success, and they have also approached me and my fellow councillors and neighbourhood officers have sent a number of emails to the tree department without any success. The residents have continually been approaching me and my fellow councillors what has been happening regarding the trees in the streets. I have been unable to give them a suitable answer. And is the department under-resourced or understaffed? Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Khan. The horticultural team are very busy with various issues. Obviously, when we've had various windy weather, rainy weather, they have to react, and a lot of the maintenance work is put to one side because of that. If there's any particular trees in question, I'm sure the horticultural team will pop out, see you, do an inspection, and then get the trees trimmed as necessary. Thank you.
Question FF.
Question FF is from Councillor Shanker to Councillor Smale. How was the cost of the A52 improvement work funded?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Shanker?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Smale, for a honest and factually correct answer. Why do you think, Councillor Smale, your predecessor, Councillor Rolleston, the council leader, Councillor Poulter, feel that it's necessary to lie in public to me and to your cabinet on the reasons for the council's reserves being depleted, as they continue to blame the A52 for the depletion of those reserves, which, as your answer confirms, is totally incorrect?
Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shanker. I believe you're asking the wrong person that question. Obviously, you've just talked about my predecessor and the leader, so why don't you ask them again next time? Thank you.
Question GG.
Question G is from Councillor Graves Senior to Councillor Jerry Pearce. Can the Cabinet member give assurances that open space on the corner of Benbridge Drive and Shellfleet Close be kept for the purposes of children's play and not used for development? Could consideration be given to use for children's football by Alveston FC?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Graves?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Councillor Pearce, thank you for your response. That is very encouraging. Can you start the process and give a timetable of the expression of interest?
Can you kick that off, Councillor Pearce?
I can kick that off, Mr. Mayor. Of course I can. I can kick that off, Mr. Graves. Councillor Graves, as you well know, because we did the same with Bolton FC as well, so yeah, so you know you've got my backing on that, yeah. Okay.
Question HH.
Question HH is from Councillor Prosser to Councillor Smale. How much money has been spent on the purchase, site preparation and other costs relating to the Beckerwell site? Can the Cabinet member confirm if information provided in a recent Freedom of Information request relating to a Section 106 agreement was correct?
Do you have a supplementary?
It's taken me 2 Freedom of Information requests to actually get this answer, and it's been very difficult, and then I've had to ask this to actually get it clarified. So can we please ensure, or what will the Council do to ensure that Freedom of Information requests are answered in a timely manner and answered correctly? Thank you.
Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prosser. Obviously, this is a governance arrangement, so obviously I will take this up with Councillor Barker, but of course we'll look into any Freedom of Information requests. Thank you.
Question II.
Question II is from Councillor Lind to Councillor Williams. Can the Cabinet member explain why Derby City Council have reduced the value of free school meal vouchers since Christmas 2021?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Lind?
I do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not only is funding reducing at a time of great crisis for our vulnerable families, but there are still vulnerable families falling through the cracks because they don't attend Derby City schools, even though they could meet the low income threshold of benefit-related free school meals if indeed they were present in Derby City schools. I'm sure we all know of families. I'm getting on to the question, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure we all know of families with SEND children not in school, awaiting SEND tribunals on AOTAS packages, children being educated outside of city.
A question, Councillor Lind, or we'll move on. Provision.
OK, I'll go on to the question now then. So some of these families may actually be struggling more than most. And they probably don't have the support networks that these schools provide. So I'd like to know, Mr. Mayor, what is the Cabinet member doing to support these families, to ensure equality, and have they yet done a full EIA?
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a number of options and ways that families who need support can get support. the first port of call that I would recommend to families who need support during this time is to phone 01332 6400 and press number 5. That will take you through to the hub support, and there you can talk about the support that you can get and advice that you can get for all sorts of support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Question JJ.
It's from Councillor Kerr to Councillor Smale. What is the residual power usage of the new council chamber audio-visual system, and can the system be turned off overnight?
Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't matter whether the power is coming through an Ethernet system from a server or whether it's coming from the mains, it's still power. And 5 watts, about 80 units, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, is costing about £1,000 a year to keep these new units here in this council chamber. Please, can we, before we have spent £1,000 this year, please can we work out how we can turn it off so that we're not spending £1,000 a year?
Councillor Smale.
We'll look into it.
Question KK.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question KK is from Councillor Dinser to Councillor Webb. Why has Shaftesbury Sports Centre been mothballed when local councillors have raised concerns and have called for the centre to be reopened or brought back into community use?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Dinser?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The response says that a written answer will be provided for all members. I've not seen a written response, but I think the reason given is that it's going to take a lot of time to get the necessary officers from across different services to consider this issue. Now, this is not the first time the question's been asked of Councillor Webb. In the question I raised, it says that local councillors have been asking what is being done about Shaftesbury Sports Centre and when will they get a response, or why have they not got a response? Surely that could have been responded to.
Councillor Webb, that was a question. Why have they not had a response?
They have had a response. The Shaftesbury Centre went to Cabinet for demolition, and that is what is proposed at the Shaftesbury Centre. The Shaftesbury Centre was mothballed by the previous administration. What they failed to do is to provide the security around it, and so therefore the vandalism that took place stripped out anything that was valuable and left the shell of a building. And that building shell is not suitable for refurbishment. So we will be working, and we are working with Derby Homes to look at housing options, because there is one housing proposal down there that covers 2 sides of the open area, and the 3rd side should be covered by the demolition of the Shaftesbury Centre. There will be a meeting tomorrow, as I understand it, to confirm this.
Question LL.
Question LL is from Councillor Shanker to Councillor Smale. It is, what has been the cost of the maintenance and preservation of the Sinfin Waste Treatment Centre to date, and what is budgeted for the next 2 years?
Councillor Shanker, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Smale, as the portfolio holder for finance, can you please confirm what the amount is that's been provisioned for both these financial years, please?
Councillor Smale.
Thank you, Councillor Shanker. I believe the table has been omitted from this document, which should have... Have you got it? Okay, the document that I've obviously received, but as you know, we've already described the amount there, roughly 6 million. Obviously, I've not got that in front of me, but as you know, I can't really relate to more information, but obviously you are briefed on this quite regularly, and we'll keep you updated as process moves along and incurring costs. Thank you.
Question MM.
MM is from Councillor Graves Senior to Councillor Hassel. How is the impact of expansion of Bolton Moor being mitigated in terms of sanitation and water treatment? Could the development cause sewage to spill onto Green Lane?
Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hassel, that is a very interesting answer. A Severn Trent water claim, it is a council planning issue. Even if it wasn't, surely you should show some concern for the residents of Derby.
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Graves, sorry. Regulation of the sewage provision and flows is regulated nationally by Ofwat, and the council has limited powers in this area. The developer has to meet standards of construction, and in order to obtain a required certification, once the site is complete, has to abide by those rules and regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Question NN.
That question is from Councillor Lind to Councillor Williams. Please can the Cabinet Member provide quarterly send tribunal statistics from July 2021 through to September 2022?
You have a supplementary, Councillor Lind.
I'm a bit confused, Mr. Mayor, because in the papers it says a response will be given at the meeting, but online a response was given. So has the response been given?
Well, if it's been given online, it's been given.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do have a supplementary,
Do you have a
Mr. Mayor.
supplementary to that response?
I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Please.
I'd like to know how many SEND tribunals have been registered against Derby City Council so far this year. I'm of the belief that it was over 40 between January and June. Maybe the Cabinet Member can correct me.
Councillor Williams.
I wouldn't dare to correct you today because I don't have that information in front of me. It's technical information and I would not be expecting to bring that to a full council tonight. However, if you would like to put your requests fully in writing to me, I shall make sure that you get the answers. Thank you.
Question 00.
Question 00 is from Councillor Dinser to Councillor Pearce. Why is there a £143,000 underspend forecast in 22-23 on the disposal of household waste when our streets and alleyways are full of fly tipping and other household rubbish?
Councillor Dinser, do you have a supplement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Pearce, thank you for your response. You indicate that fly tipping incidents for January have reduced by 16%. Do you then accept that 84% of fly tipped is still acceptable? And you indicate that alleyways blockage is not a council responsibility, but I put it to you is that because of the lack of access to our household domestic waste centres, we are having more and more fly tipped in our alleyways and on our streets. And when are you going to do something about that rather than making savings?
Councillor Pearce.
Councillor Dinser, we return again to our favourite subject, or your favourite subject, of fly tipping. It says, looking at the number of fly tipping incidents for January to the start of September for both 2021 and 2022, the data shows that we have seen a decrease in the number of incidents of fly tipping by 16% so far this year. Yes, no, but then you brought up 84%, which I've no idea what you're on about there. Waste in alleyways is not something the council has a responsibility to clear because the majority of that is through landlords. And that's why the council doesn't clear it. If you've got waste in the alleyways, you need to get in touch with the environmental health, as we've already said to you before.
Question PP.
Question PP is from Councillor Shanker to Councillor Smale. What capital projects are at risk of budget overspends?
Councillor Shanker, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smale, for your answer. What reassurances can you give the public that the BPV will not see any increase in costs, given that we're told it's a fixed cost project?
Councillor Smale, perhaps you'll tell me what a PPP is. Okay, yeah.
As I refer to Councillor Hassel's answer, we will indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
From last month.
And finish then question QQ.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The final question is from Councillor Graves Senior to Councillor Pearce. How does the Cabinet Member feel when he reads negative feedback from residents about accessing the Rainsway Household Waste Recycling Centre?
Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary? No. We've got it through in an hour. I don't think that's bad. Yeah. We've got to item 9 then. It's a minute extract from the Standards Committee in relation to the reappointment of independent members. Councillor Shiraz Khan, as Chair of the Committee, will you move the minute, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, move as printed.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Shanker, thank you. Anybody wish to speak on it? All right, those in favour, please show. Any against? That's carried. Item 10 then, we'll now consider a second minute extract from the Standards Committee presenting their annual report for the previous municipal year. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, move as printed.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Shanker, thank you. Any further speakers? Those in favour, please show. Any against? It's carried. Item 11, the next minute requiring approvals from the Health and Wellbeing Board. The Board are recommending alterations to their terms of reference to account for changes brought about by the creation of integrated care systems under the Health and Care Act 2022. Councillor Webb, as the Cabinet Member with responsibility for health and a member of the Board, will you move the minute, please?
I move the recommendations as printed, Chair, Mr Mayor.
Is there a seconder? Williams, thank you. Any further speakers? All right. Those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? That's carried. We now go to the late item. We will now consider the late item I referred to earlier, which is a minute extract from the Council Cabinet relating to the flexible use of capital receipts. I've agreed to this consideration to allow the projects to which the receipts will be allocated to progress expediently and for the submission to government to be made before the end of this month. Councillor Smale, as Cabinet Member responsible for finance, will you move the minute, please?
I'll move the minute, please, Mr Mayor.
Is there a seconder? Anybody wish to speak on this? Those in favour, please show. Anybody against? You can't vote for and against, Councillor Potter. Right, okay. Item 12. We're now presented with the annual report of the overview and scrutiny for the last municipal year. Councillor Dinser, as one of the Vice Chairs of the Executive Scrutiny Board, will you move the recommendations and present the report to the Council, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor, move the recommendation as printed.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Shanker. Will anybody want to speak on it? Okay. Anybody against? That's carried. Item 13 is appointments to outside bodies and charities. Final item of business before we move to the motions. It's a report proposing alterations to the appointments to outside bodies and charities normally made at our annual general meeting. Councillor Barker, as this is a governance matter, will you move the recommendation, please?
Move the recommendation printed, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hassel, thank you. Any further speakers? All right. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Anybody against? That's carried. We now move to the 4 motions received prior to the meeting and circulated with your agenda documents. The first one is to be moved by Councillor A.W. Graves and seconded by Councillor Cuss. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Members of the Council, we bring this motion in the expectation that the full Council will recognise that HMO status is being abused in certain areas of the city, causing severe community issues for the wider neighbourhood. We hope that you will support this motion and that as a Council we can have some control over the growth of this type of housing. For those that might not know, HMOs do not need planning consent to convert a house for up to 6 rooms. HMOs do need a licence if a house is converted for 5 people or more. So if a house is converted from a 3-bedroom house to a 6-roomed HMO, the owner only has to register with the council for a licence. There is no councillor input or local resident input, no planning committee and no requirement to consider all the aspects that the planning committee considers. If a house is for 4 people, then there is no requirement to register, and therefore do not have the protection of the licensing regulations. Only if the owner converts to more than 6 rooms is planning permission required. And perversely, that councillors and local residents can have a say in that development. There is also no requirement for registered social housing landlords to register or license HMOs that they own. The council has approximately 600 houses registered in the city as a HMO. We don't know how many the city has that are less than 5 rooms, and we don't know how many are exempt due to exemption rules. The idea of a HMO is to provide cheaper accommodation for individuals and to help with our housing crisis. The business side of this is that landlords can increase their property income by over 3 times against renting one as a single dwelling. There's a definite need for HMOs. It provides affordability for many. It helps the council with accommodation services, and it provides landlords with high returns. However, Mr. Mayor, in some areas of the city, the abundance of HMOs is detrimentally changing community areas. In Alveston, for example, we have over 65 registered HMOs and unknown numerous non-registered HMOs. Some of those are concentrated in particular streets. Of those that are registered, London Road has 36. Brighton Road has 13. Most are terraced housing. This creates severe parking issues and impacts on community cohesion. I assume all councillors have encountered parking issues in their wards, and when a building that only has 1 parking space on their front, but has the potential of 6 or more drivers living there, the impact is severe. This has a mental health impact on all those concerned. When tenants on the whole are only seeing a HMO as a temporary place to live, they tend not to care so much about the area they're living in. Those who have forever homes see a marked deterioration in the area. Some find this change in their street or neighbourhood enough to try and move. That leaves another home vulnerable to becoming a HMO, and so worsens the impact. You can see all the consequences of what I'm saying. This motion does not seek to stop HMOs in the city. What it does do is allow us as a council, as councillors, as local residents, to have a say of where and how many can be implemented. It gives some protection against the negative impact of a HMO. It also provides some democratic contribution in a system that doesn't currently have. I commend this motion to council.
Councillor Cuss, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this motion as it will delegate greater powers to the council. Too many HMOs in an area can threaten both the market and the community. High concentration of HMOs in certain areas are putting pressure on the infrastructure and affecting the local community, with them having very little or no say. HMOs are and can be good, but poorly located and poorly managed HMOs has a negative impact in the area. I've had many people contact me regarding poorly located HMOs, and this new rule would stop that by requiring a planning application so that the council can make a decision on each individual case. This sort of control works well in other areas, and a lot of areas around Derby is crying out for this. I hope everyone can support this motion.
Thank you. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an amendment to make to this, which should be circulated.
Can we hang on a second while we'll get a sight of that? I know you're leaving your job on Friday, Lucy, but I would like a copy. Thank you. Emily, would you like to tell us what it is and whether it's in order? I know you're leaving your job on Friday, Lucy, but I would like a copy. Thank you. I've got to have eyes in the back of my head.
Yeah. Put a copy.
Oh, well, that's true, yeah. Emily, would you like to
Okay.
tell us what it is and I'm told it is in order. Councillor Khan, would you like to move it?
I would, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This amendment, Mr. Mayor, doesn't seek to make this a political issue, and I don't consider this to be one, and most of the people that serve with me on the planning committee will know so. This merely calls for recognition of the work that's already been carried out by myself, Councillor Potter, and members of the planning committee, as well as the officers. And I believe that is right, and we should acknowledge what's been going on for the past 3 or 4 months. Now, my position on this has always been clear, and Councillor Graves knows this, as members of previous committees have known. And for the past 3 years, I've been asking for the introduction of Article 4 on this. When Steve Hassel was the chair, we agreed on this, and when I was chair, along with Councillor Kerr as vice chair, and today as Jed Potter is my vice chair, that we need to do something about this. There is no question whatsoever that this is having an effect on the lives of people in various wards. I mean, Councillor Graves mentioned 600, and he has 65 in his ward. Well, in the Arboretum ward alone, there's close to 150. 5 wards across the city share approximately 85% of the HIMOs that are in total in Derby that we know about. And this, I believe, and I have been saying so, needs to be addressed, and needs to be addressed quickly. It is not merely a question of parking or fly tipping. No, this has health issues. This has, sort of physical altercations between neighbours who have been friends and, sort of family for years, from one street to the other because of parking issue. Then there's the issue of fly tipping. A terraced house that had a family with 2 children living in it, and a bin today has 4 or 5 bins that are there, and they're lining up on the streets. Litter is overflowing from them, going onto the streets. And then there's the issue of the impact it has on the amenities, which is the doctor's surgeries, the dentists, the opticians, and also on the roads and the streets that are there. These houses weren't meant to have 6 adults living in them. They were merely 2-bedroom, walk-through lounge, terraced houses that have been converted with loft conversions, rear extensions of the garden, to such an extent that there's no garden left for them. I have always advocated, and will continue to do so, that we need better housing, more communal areas, better standard of accommodation, so that people who find themselves in unfortunate situations of having to move into a room rather than a house, that their health is not impacted. And I have had meetings over the last 3 months, along with Councillor Potter, with Paul Clark, and I've asked him to seek the introduction of Article 4. Now, Article 4 on its own is not going to stop this. I have asked Paul Clark that there should be a multi-agency approach seeking guidance from offices of licensing, of housing standards, and building regulation, as well as looking at other employees, including the fire department, and looking at this and addressing this in a way that only those HMOs are allowed which are up to a high standard and in the relevant areas. Today, Arboretum has more than its share of that, and those are the only ones that we know about that are licensed. 150 in a single ward of HIMOs. Why aren't officers looking at this from a licensing perspective and saying, well, enough is enough. We shouldn't have more than 1, 2 or 3 in a small area. But it seems that when it comes to wards like Arboretum, Darley, Halverston, Abbey, Normanton, it's a question of letting them go on. And this simply has to stop. And as I said, Article 4 is the start of it. We need to have a wider consultation with all council departments to make sure that we come up with a solution for this. And Article 4 should be sought by our council, and we should be presenting the evidence. And there is, evidence in abundance to show that Article 4 is necessary. And I think, and I hope that Councillor Graves and Councillor Cuss see this amendment in the context that it is, not to seek any detraction as a political maneuver or anything like that, but simply to recognise the work is being carried on, and the work hopefully will be carried on now that we have a cabinet member who believes in this as well. So before that,
Councillor Khan, you've had well over your 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking at the clock. I was just admiring your chain and how you look. So perhaps I could just have another minute just because I've praised you. So just want to wrap up by saying that in the past, officers maybe have said that there is not enough support from cabinet member. Well, today officers have support from Steve Hassel, they have support from myself, they have support from the Vice Chair, Jed Potter. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hassel, thank you. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll speak now, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Firstly, I'd just like to recognise that, this is a cross-party initiative and action, including our friends over there on the reform benches, that many members across this council have had or heard of issues around HIMOs. And it's in recognition that actually when we do come together we can resolve these issues and put politics aside. I think what I would like to just sort of reiterate the point that Councillor Khan has made is that Article 4 is not a silver bullet. For example, and Councillor Cuss referred to, things not happening because we've got Article 4. Antisocial behaviour is not a planning concern. Therefore, when the relevant issue arises, it must be dealt with by the relevant agency. And that's why we must have a twin approach with Article 4, with stronger licensing against landlords, and make sure that they are doing their duty in providing decent housing and accommodation, but also providing a decent environment for families to live in too. I would like to add that it's important that we do not vilify people who live in HIMOs. In some cases, this is the first step on the housing ladder, and a step down from this is onto the pavement. And we have a duty to stop that from happening. And it's fair to say, as I've just said, a lot of the issues with HIMOs can be dealt with a cross-agency approach. But we are mainly talking about proliferation, numbers that aren't cohesive with the area that they're in. So, like I say, a robust approach to licensing, and landlords will, in a lot of instances, resolve a lot of the problems that occur, and hopefully we will have changes in this area coming to Cabinet next month. I would like to think that we live in a decent, tolerant society that gives a helping hand to those that need it, but also recognising that residents deserve to live in a clean and safe environment, and that any new developments should not detract from that. It is, of course, a fine line to tread. I will absolutely fully support and endorse an Article 4 directive if the evidence states that one is needed, and that's a really important point I need to make, that we are not the decision makers on Article 4. It is the Secretary of State who will need to look at the required evidence to ensure that we have those powers. So it's an incumbent on everyone in this chamber to help deliver that and show that evidence. And I understand that Paul Clark is happy to accept any and all evidence of that nature. So, yes, I think we can all get behind this motion. I hope that the Reform Group, and particularly Councillor Graves, accepts that we are just trying to strengthen the motion, not subvert it in any way. And I hope that we can all get behind this and make our communities better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further speakers on the amendment? Councillor Skelton and then Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just say that really my group welcome this amendment, and as we welcome the actual motion as well. This is a cross-party issue, and we all hopefully will be able to help in getting the evidence that's needed to move this forward. And I'm sure the LGA would be able to be very helpful. I certainly know of a number of councils that have already done this, so it is achievable. We've just got to make sure we do it in the right way.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've been mentioned by my chair on planning, I think it's only incumbent on me to have a say on this. I would refer everybody to Dame Judith Hackett's review of the circumstances relating to Grenville Towers. That review has given us the Fire Protection and New Builds Fire Safety Act 2021, the Fire Safety Regulations 2022, and the Building Safety Act 2024, which is a staggered introduction. It gives the fire service a lot of power with regard to landlords, not just for high-rise, but any communal living premises. And whilst we need a multi-agency approach on HIMOs, I believe that the Derbyshire Fire and Rescue will be one of the leading lights for a multi-agency approach. And I believe that we should liaise with them at the earliest possible time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further speakers on the amendment?
Councillor Hussain, Councillor.
Councillor Hussain first and then Councillor West.
Oh, sorry. It is Councillor Webb, because before me. Do you want to go before me, Councillor Webb?
West.
Oh, West, sorry. Sorry, is that? Okay. I'll keep it very brief. I think most people realize, most councillors in this chamber now realize that the issue of HMOs throughout the city is impacting adversely on local people, more so in some wards than other wards. Now, I'm not saying HMOs should be eliminated from the city. I think they are actually serving a very good purpose and they're providing a good service. There is a new concept which started to emerge a couple of years ago, but is now taking off in a big way, and that is room renting. That room renting was common when I first came to this country back in 1968. 5 or 6 different people lived in different rooms, and that was quite common. And then in the intervening period, obviously housing associations and the councils, and there was encouragement from the planning as well. So the move that took place was towards smaller kind of apartments, if you like, or they weren't sharing rooms, they had their own bathroom and a little kitchenette and that kind of thing. But the room rents are now very popular because the landlords are providing Wi-Fi, they pay the council tax, and they pay gas and electric bill. And the average charge for those rooms is somewhere between 150 and 125. You can see financially it makes sense both ways, both for the consumer who's after accommodation and also for landlord, because their income goes 3 times higher than would be the case if they had let that large property to a single. What we are arguing, and I think Councillor Khan was arguing the same point, what we would like to see is more even spread throughout the city rather than heavy concentration like is the case, say, in Elveston and also happening in our ward all the time. And I'm sure, Councillor Khan, the figure that you mentioned, around 150 in our Arboretum, are probably just the registered ones. But most of these new ones which are
happening all over my ward anyway. I see them taking shape almost every week. Something is cropping up somewhere. And they're probably not on the radar. The only way to get the figures on that one would probably be through Housing Standards team and not the planning section. So on the whole, you know, we do accept that there is need and they are serving a good purpose, but we need to have some control over where they're springing up. And that is desperately needed. And I'm sure there's a cross-party kind of agreement on this, and I hope with everybody's help and effort, we can do something about this. Thank you.
Councillor West.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Khan says, work has been going on this for some time. The Regeneration and Housing Scrutiny Committee raised concerns about HMOs. I'm sure everybody saw that at item 12. The Planning Committee has voted against numerous applications. You know, you've been on the committee. I regularly state the applications are contrary to policy GD5 of the adopted City of Derby Local Plan Review and the guidance of the National Planning Policy Framework as a reason for refusal, and this is what is needed to be amended, not just using Article 4. I'm personally not against HMOs as a concept, neither are many people in this chamber. They do have a place for those who either can't afford more or don't want to pay for more. But what I and the committee are against is HMOs on every street, high numbers on certain streets and very high numbers in some of the areas of the city where they cause issues for other residents. This needs to be a part of an agreed plan for the city, not an isolated motion that doesn't go far enough. I support the amendment.
Any other speakers on the amendment? In which case, those in favour of the amendment, please show. Anybody against? And as you voted for the amendment, I assume that you're happy. Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Graves?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to say just a few words. This is a very important issue for the city. I hear the Councillor Khan and Councillor Hassels talking about the political aspect of it. This is not a political aspect of it. It's a real serious problem in the city. And I am just overwhelmed. It didn't matter whether you amended the motion at all. I was just overwhelmed the fact that all the councillors in this council chamber have come together to support this. And I think I'm literally overwhelmed by it because it is a very serious issue. It's a serious issue in Alveston. I hear that it's very serious in Arboretum. And if we can do something about it, then let's get on and do it. And I'm just so pleased that I've been able to bring this motion to the council so that the councillors can actually have a debate about it. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. It just shows your power. You've united the Conservatives, the Labour, the Independents, the Lib Dems, all round to your way of thinking. Thank you. Those in favour of the motion as amended? Before we move on to the next motion, can we have a 5-minute comfort break, particularly for those on the platform who can't get up and nip out, and come back at 25 to 8? Please take your seats. Okay. I think most of you might have realised that our mace has the royal cipher CR on it, Carolus Rex. Derby has got it right for the first time in 337 years. Good. The next one then is on electoral reform, again to be moved by Councillor Graves. Good luck with this one.
You're not predetermining your decision, are you, Councillor Wood?
Merely that you united the chamber on the last one. I wondered if you could do it again.
You're wishing me luck. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I love that, actually. Mr. Mayor, this motion speaks for itself. It has been a long-standing argument that primarily comes from smaller parties like mine, where we achieve a certain percentage of the vote that is not reflected in the numbers that are elected. However, I was a member of the Labour Party once, many years ago, and advocated PR then. I believe in democracy and equality. I believe that people should be represented in the way they wish to be, and that they should be heard through a balanced set of politicians. I have grown to realise that balance tends to provide better decision-making and benefits the electorate in a much more rounded way. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland already use PR, and yet in Westminster we are deprived of that improvement. Interestingly, many of those politicians who voted to remain in the EU back in 2016 do not support PR in our national elections, yet speak highly of those countries who do. It is a contradiction that is puzzling. Clearly, we live in a two-party system where the electors flip-flop from Labour to Conservative and back again. It is a flawed system where the majority of voters vote for the least worst option in their eyes instead of the best option they would prefer. A PR system would give validity to all voters instead of only the winners of an election that first past the post provides. For those who say PR will cause leadership problems for the country, I will mention again the other countries that form part of the UK. They manage perfectly well. The 80 countries in the EU that are elected under PR manage perfectly well. I commend this to Council.
Thank you. Councillor Prosser, you're seconding, and do you wish to speak now or later? Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, you're right. I'm going to burst your bubble now, aren't I? Because obviously my group will oppose this motion, and I'll give you the reasons why. First past the post is a tried and tested system that ensures stability and clear governance. It prevents disproportionate influence by minority parties with minimal public support, who typically end up holding the balance of power in proportional representation. The British people were clear on this matter in a referendum on voting systems in 2011. FPTP is well established and understood by the voters. They voted 69% in favour of retaining the first past the post system. It provides a clear and robust way of electing members of Parliament, and there is an unambiguous link between constituents and their representatives in Westminster. For the most part, FPTP produces governments with working majorities in Parliament. This leads to efficient decision-making. FPTP also allows for the formation of a strong opposition party that can provide a check on the balance of power in the government of the day. I believe that alternative systems are less transparent, more complicated, and less likely to lead to efficient government. The Conservative Party manifesto of 2019 promised to continue supporting first past the post system of voting. I believe that FPTP provides for a clear and transparent electoral process, allowing voters to remove politicians who fail to deliver. Transferable voting systems were rejected, as I say, by the British people in the past, including in the referendum of 2011. As said, 67.9% were in favour of retaining the current system. That was for the Brexit vote as well. And if I understand that you wouldn't question the referendum on that because that one suited you. Having said that, there's also another thing to consider, and that is to actually get a seat in Parliament, which I presume that you're open to get if this system went into place. You actually have to attend there and not just send videos to your constituents. I reject the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Proportional representation versus first past the post. It takes me back, I'm fairly sure, in fact, this was a question in my AS Politics exam about 6.5 years ago. So while it's an absolute waste of the Chamber's time today, it's a wonderful little nostalgia trip for me. And I have to start by outlining that to hear my former Brexit Party colleagues talk about how brilliant European systems are and how we must adopt their laws and their ways of doing things, I'm fairly sure is the definition of irony. I'd also believed, and Councillor Barker mentioned it, so I must be remembering right, we had a referendum on moving away from first past the post in 2011, which was resoundingly rejected. So come on, gents, we know the mantra. We won, you lost, the will of the people, Project Fear, or are we for a people's vote this time? The motion references that PR is used for Scottish and Welsh Assembly elections, and Councillor Graves, you mentioned it. Scotland does have a mixed member system for electing the members of the Scottish Parliament, that is true. But it retains first past the post for 73 constituencies, which is more than half of the members of the Scottish Parliament, with the remaining regional members, not the constituency members, being elected under the de Hont method. Wales users, you'll never believe it, the exact same system, keeping first past the post for constituency representation with PR for the regional representation. So let's not mislead the public to say that first past the post has been abandoned entirely. That brings me on to two main elements of this motion that Councillor Graves and Prosser have failed to address. Which system of proportional representation are you advocating for? Councillor Prosser, are you asking for the numerical alternative vote that was rejected in the referendum? Or are we asking for the supplementary vote, which you lost the Derbyshire Police and Crime Commissioner election in? Councillor Graves, are you asking for the mixed member system with compensatory proportional seats? Or is it the party list system that you lost the European election in? Maybe you're both asking for the de Hont method, as I mentioned before. Or maybe you prefer parallel voting's mixed member majoritarian system, which functions similarly to one of the other systems, but a slight difference produces wildly different results and changes the way people will cast their votes. The motion doesn't state which system we actually want, and I'm assuming that you knew there were multiple systems of proportional representation. Similarly, as Councillor Barker alluded to, a keystone of our democracy is every citizen has one member of Parliament. You know who they are, you can vote them in, you can vote them out, you know how to contact them, and most constituencies are about the same size, with a few exceptions, including the Isle of Wight. But the unbroken link is there. How are you proposing to keep that link? Do you propose to keep that link? Because not all of these systems can keep that link. Some will require multi-member constituencies, and that's not alluded to in the motion. And I ask, what's the answer to those questions? I hope you'll be able to answer those when you come back into the debate. Because party list in a single-member constituency, for example, that's first past the post. It won't work. The alternative vote in a multi-member constituency will take months to count and can be wildly inaccurate for the slightest mistake. I understand the ideology behind it, but it really isn't outlined what system we'd be going for, and it's a really poor motion. For those reasons, I can't back the motion, but given, as I say, how poor it is in terms of it not being specific, I do have one suggestion, which is, can I have all the paper copies of this amendment when the meeting's finished, so I can open a butcher's and show the people of Derby what an absolute pig's ear looks like? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
I bet she likes it.
Mr. Mayor, I have an amendment. It is, it is very, very simple. At the end of the existing motion, I want to have and local elections, and I've just written this up.
That makes it worse.
Hopefully the officers will accept that as sufficient paperwork. Would you like to take it up?
Tempting for reform.
Of course, Is a fact packet allowed?
May I speak? Yes, please. Thank you. No, but just very simple. It's already been mentioned. It's already been mentioned that one of the reasons why people think it's really important to have one-to-one in terms of MPs is because you need to have one MP for one voter. We know that in Derby, as councillors, you have a choice. You have a choice of which of 3 councillors to go to at the moment. It may be slightly different next year, but at the moment you can choose. We see nothing wrong with having 3 councillors per ward, that people have a choice of who to go and speak to. Because of the voting system we have, the first past the post voting system, we tend to have all 3 people of the same party within that ward. If we'd had a different voting system, we would have more choice. So instead of being elected on less than 50% of the vote, most people, number 1 on the list, may well be elected by more than 50%. Number 2 on the list will have rolled forward, and it'll be 50% of the remaining people will have voted for them, and 50% of the remaining people for the 3rd person. So people will have more democratic accountability if we had a single transferable vote system for local elections. They have this in Wales, in Scotland. They have something similar in Northern Ireland. In fact, Northern Ireland has single transferable vote for MPs as well. So I think we are missing a trick by not adding on a very small amendment to say, actually, we as local politicians would like to be elected in a way that is more democratic, that gives more power to the voters, and means that gives us more legitimacy to be standing here in this chamber. Thank you.
I just have one question on that, and that's we are going next year to elect 3 councillors per ward, and the public can vote as they like for the individuals, so they could have 3 different ones. But of course you voted against that. No doubt Councillor Skelton in seconding will be able to elucidate. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? Councillor Gilrev.
Yeah, I simply don't get the point. Can councillors here, can they effectively make any change to the electoral process in the UK? What's the point of this? I just fail to get the whole point. Amendment and the motion beyond
Councillor, speaking on the amendment this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wow, proportional representation. No, I'm not going to go through that one again. I don't see the logic behind this, because we mentioned that we're going to be changing the system now to all-out elections. If the Boundary Commission's proposals are as we believe they may be, we will have a 1-member ward and several 3-member wards. As I explained at what most people will agree is probably great length during my previous contribution, you'll need different systems. So are we proposing, if Alveston Village was to go ahead as a 1-member ward and Oakwood as a 3, Alveston Village would have to have a different system to what would be required in Oakwood, Alderstry, Littleover. It just wouldn't work, and it confused the vast majority of the voters. Why don't you try winning instead?
Thank you. Any other speakers on the amendment? Okay. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Those against? That is defeated. Brings us to the substantive motion. Are there any other speakers on the substantive motion? Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. We've heard about quite eloquently, I must add, from Councillor Barker and Councillor Eyre about the previous referendums in 2011. I'm sure Councillor Graves will commit to totally honouring the outcomes of referendums. It's a live debate. There are some people who want to change the system. There's a lot more people, I believe, who want to keep the system as it is. And it's good, it's healthy to have that debate. But let's be completely frank. This motion today has achieved what Councillor Graves has wanted. He's made his little video. He'll post his little video. He's not really bothered about the outcome of this vote. And I'm sure he'll defend his position when he gets up. I'm really not sure what Councillor Kerr added to the debate. She was talking about 1 MP per voter. I'm not sure how that would work. It would all be MPs, I think, if that was the case, and maybe that would be popular. But let's, respect the fact there was a referendum here not that long ago, as far as these matters are concerned. The public spoke quite clearly, and let's just respect that fact.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the substantive motion? Councillor Prosser, do you wish to exercise your right? Councillor Graves, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you already preempted what the decision of this council is going to be. I mean, if it was a planning meeting, you'd be against the rules. You shouldn't have really said that, so that you predetermined what your decision was going to be. However, I didn't video this one, by the way, Councillor Shanker. But what I am pleased about is that you watched my other one. I should hope so. Excellent. I hear all the arguments. I've heard the arguments for a long time. The idea that 2011 is not longer far away enough doesn't mean that we shouldn't bring things for discussion into the chamber. Unfortunately, Councillor Eyre, you got me wrong on the motion. The reason that I wasn't prescriptive about which PR system we want to use is so that we can't make that decision. It's the parliamentarians that make that decision. So if I was prescriptive, all those people would round in on that. Surely what we should be doing as a local authority is saying to the parliamentarians, look, we want you to consider this. Please go away and come back with a form of PR that suits, that works. All right. So when you say that it's a, did you call it a pig's ear or something? I can't remember now. It's not a pig's ear. PR does work, and it works in a lot of places. And it's quite rightful for me to bring that motion to this council chamber for people to discuss. And that's all I'm doing. And yes, it's something that I've wanted. And I do recall some time ago, there was something that you particularly wanted. I mean, you were never involved in keeping the first past the post system, but you've changed your mind. Well, I haven't. I still like the idea of being properly represented, fairly represented, equally represented from all our constituents, because we do have a lot of wards out there that are represented by one party, and yet there are other people that voted other parties. Surely their vote should be heard. I mean, there are people that vote Conservative in my ward. There are people that vote Labour in my ward. There's a few people that vote Lib Dem. Okay, their voices should be heard. So, I do bring that motion forward, and again, I'm just pleased the fact that we've been able to discuss this and we can understand, and yes, maybe I could report to other people that this is how the council voted in a particular way on an issue that's serious. So, I do commend this motion to council.
All those in favour, please show. Those against? That motion is defeated. Thank you. I was fascinated that Councillor Eyre had that question on his AS level paper. So did I, 52 years ago. Yes, we did. And I've studied British Constitution ever since. Item 16 is storm flow overflow sewage discharge. Wonderful. This is what council meetings should be about. Councillor Dinser, would you care to move?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and for your enthusiasm for such an important topic. Mr. Mayor, I think we're all appalled by the fact that sewage and water mixing and how it can have an impact, negative impact on the environment, not only of our rivers and our countryside, but potentially to the citizens of Derby and the public health concerns. The motion identifies the fact that in the boundary of the city, large amounts of sewage dumps are occurring across the city, and that is surely unacceptable. We all know water is a precious commodity, as we have learned in the last few years with the impact of climate change. Better water management of our rainwater has to be a priority, with the increasing chance of periods of prolonged drought being more and more evidence, and flash flooding. We all need to use water more smartly, but our ancient Victorian system, which mixes storm overflows and sewage discharge, is out of date, inefficient, and can cause environmental and public health concerns. Therefore, we all need to better manage our use, storage, and collection of water. And the Water Authority, Severn Trent, which has responsibility within this region, is by no means the worst of the water companies, but still the information that has been made available in the motion is stark and not conducive to proper environmental health and public health issues. What I want to say is that the motion asks for clarity and accountability. We can't order anything, but we can ask Severn Trent Water to come and explain why there are so many discharges happening in the city of Derby and what they're going to be doing about that. Particularly in the case that the government has put out a standards and targets, DEFRA has done, which is looking at publishing in their storm out of overflows and discharge reduction plan, which was published in 26th of August 2022. That stipulates what needs to be done. What the concern I have and the people of Derby have is that being met? Is it being surpassed? Or are we going backwards? And just to give an example of two particular targets, the plan talks about Severn Trent Water by 2025 reducing discharges to an average of 20 per year. By 2030, to ensure storm overflows and sewage treatment works do not harm and go to zero by 2030. It would be really helpful to bring the relevant Severn Trent Water authorities to one of our scrutiny committees, community review boards, to ask these questions and see what they are doing, what more can be done, and how we can ensure that they provide a better service for the people of Derby. Mr. Mayor, I commend this motion, and I hope we can get support for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay. Councillor West, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I'll speak now, Mr. Mayor, briefly. So, sewage has been intentionally dumped into Derby's waterways. If this had been an accident, we would all have been aghast. But it's not an accident. It was voted as acceptable. I'm absolutely sure that nobody in this room thinks it's acceptable. It's time for us to do something about this disgusting practice, and that time is now. Please vote in favour of this motion. Tell Severn Trent this is unacceptable and that Derby deserves better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to highlight that the asks within this motion are already within the gift of the Community Scrutiny's chair, as chair. So I would argue that, you know, if it was such a burning issue for yourself, you could have done this quite a long time ago. That aside, I and my group concur with the fundamentals of your motion and will support it. It's worth noting that Severn Trent has a drainage and wastewater management plan which is out for consultation at the moment, and I would encourage member participation that would complement this motion. Clearly, an overarching commitment to ceasing discharge into our rivers is what is required by Severn Trent, along with an equal commitment to investment and improvement to sewage and infrastructure. There are several things that need to be done. but are generally within Severn Trent's powers to enact. They can replace combined sewers with separate surface and water and foul sewers in the city and beyond, but obviously this is hugely costly, a huge cost. Also, reducing the amount of water draining to combined sewers, and this is where the council is helping by installing sustainable drainage for new highway drainage schemes, ensuring new developments reduce surface water runoff through the planning system and promotion of green-blue infrastructure in urban areas. We also need an improved maintenance plan on the ageing combined sewer network to ensure capacity is optimised. This is the lowest cost option, but would likely not be enough to prevent sewer overflows on its own. I would ask that should your request to Severn Trent be successful or not, you inform members of this chamber of the outcome and we will act collectively accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Carr and then Councillor Graves. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, given that most of this is Lib Dem policy nationally, I'm glad to see that you're following along with us, Labour lot. I have a friend who is a local canoer. He's also a full-time representative of the British Canoe Union, and this is a subject very dear to his and my heart. And it's a shame that this just refers to Derby, because some of the discharges, particularly Duffield, which discharges thousands of hours of sewage into the river, only about 1.5 miles above the spot at Darley Abbey where kids play. I think this motion is entirely to be welcome, and my party will be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend Councillor Dinser for bringing this motion to Council. It is a worthwhile subject and one that is close to my heart. It is disgusting that, as a country, we allow companies to discharge sewage, effluent, poison and pollution into our waterways and seas. It is a subject that raises its head every now and again. This time, there was a recent downpour that resulted in advice not to swim or bathe in many of our beloved beaches and rivers, because our foreign-owned water companies have not put in place any measures to prevent overflow. Why? Because successive governments have failed to legislate to protect our water and its citizens from allowing the utility companies to allow effluent and sewage to spill into our waters. This is scandalous. There are many companies that find it profitable to discharge their waste into our rivers and seas, a disgraceful practice. If the owners of these companies were presented with a prison sentence rather than a fine, maybe we would have clean rivers and seas. I think it is shocking that as a country we allow anything like this to happen legally. No day goes by when our rivers are not being used as a toilet. We allow people to swim in sewage as a matter of course. The weir in Alveston is a source of amusement for many children that do not know the difference. So, Councillor Dinser, I support the aims of this motion, but feel that it needs government intervention. Maybe if our MPs got involved, it would be a great start. However, any positive action towards solving this problem, I will support.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Any other speakers? Councillor Williams.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't planning on speaking on this one, but can I please ask that if we do get these changes, please do not encourage young children to swim in the weir if it is safely rid of all the sewage, because the cold water swimming there actually has cost us lives in the past. Please do not encourage that at all, even if the sewage is removed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No, in which case we'll move to the vote. Those in favour of the motion. So, beg your pardon. Yes, you do have the right to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Reminded.
All I wanted to say, I know we all need to go home. All I wanted to say is it's welcome that we've got another unanimous support, hopefully unanimous support for this particular motion. And it is really important that the public health and the environmental concerns are tackled. And I do take on board Councillor Graves' point about plans and enforcement of them is really important. And it's too long, I think, that water authorities have been allowed to push too much sewage and water overflow together into our rivers and streams. So thank you very much for those who supported the motion, and hope we can get a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you for pulling me up there. And I'm not just going through the motions. But, those in favour of the motion, please show. Anybody against? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 17 then is another motion reducing energy use in Derby, to be moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Lonsdale. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I want to start by taking people back 6 months, a bit more than 6 months. The weather was cold at the end of last winter, and Russia walked into Ukraine. Russia was benefiting by selling gas and oil to the West. And one of the things people started saying was we should use less of theirs. We shouldn't be giving them revenue. We shouldn't be giving them the means to be able to build more weapons that they're going to throw at our friend, Ukraine. Now the tables have been turned. The war is continuing. Winter is coming. Gas stocks are not what we want them to be across the whole of Europe. And Russia has restricted gas supplies. So it's not us that are saying don't buy. They are saying we won't sell. And the impact of that is that European economies, which have been hit hard by the war, are struggling to be able to pay for the gas to bring up their stocks for the winter. And so are we, because the price of gas has gone up, because there is less available on the global market. We pay for it in dollars. Just as the sterling has fallen, the euro has fallen because our economies are being weakened by the impacts of the war. And it means that gas is in short supply and we are paying more for it. So lucky Russia are holding on to half their gas and getting just as much money for the half that they are selling as they were doing a year ago, in big round numbers. So what's the solution? The solution is to reduce the demand for gas, because if we reduce the demand for gas, the price will fall. It'll benefit all of us. It'll mean that Russia don't get as much for the gas that they are selling. And it will also mean that there is more around to generate the electricity and to heat our homes this winter. The European Union has recognised this, and they are suggesting that we should be cutting our energy use, both gas and electricity, because they're so closely entwined, by around 15%. And they feel that that will make the difference between the threat of having blackouts this winter and not. Because if we do nothing and there isn't enough gas, if there isn't enough fuel to be able to generate the power we want and to put gas through our systems to be able to get to heat our homes, the safe thing to do is that they will be turned off. And that will mean we have an unplanned situation, that homes are in darkness, that factories won't be working, that our economies will be hit. And some of us here can think back to the 1970s when this happened last time in Britain. So the solution is simple. The EU have identified it. Not all of us like the EU, but the solution is still there, regardless of who comes up with it. We need to reduce our use. So the City Council is actually only about 2% of the energy use in the city. And probably Derby is only about 2% of the energy use in the country. And that's why we have to work together, and we have to publicise what we're doing, and we have to encourage other people to follow down the same path that will protect their livelihoods, their well-being in their house, and also should be able to impact over time on the prices that we are paying for our fuel. So in the short term, we've got a few things that I mentioned there that we can do. We can not overheat our buildings. We can turn off lights that we're not going to be using, and we can turn off our system in here as well. That'll help just a little tiny bit. Because they are things that we can do without impacting on our lives and our well-being. And we can encourage others to take similar action. I'm not precious about the list. There are loads of other things we can do. If you go on a good energy-saving website, there are lots of things that they will suggest that you can do, like not filling your kettle up too much when you only want to have a single mug of hot water. You can turn off the lights in rooms that you're not using. You can make sure that your courtesy light outside doesn't turn on when people are walking along the street. Lots of little things, but if lots of little things will add up into a bigger situation and more that we can do. In the long term, imagine if the UK didn't need to import oil or gas from other countries. Then we wouldn't be forced into the corner by foreign powers. And if that was true for all countries in the world, we wouldn't be able to be held to ransom in the way that things feel a bit as they are at the moment and what we felt back in the 70s with OPEC. Britain is really lucky. It has great potential for producing much more energy and to waste a lot less energy. It's got tidal, it's got wave, and we're not doing enough of all those. But they're not going to give quick responses, but we need to start now to plan for those things in the future. France is opening a new anaerobic gas plant, turning waste food or sewage into green methane almost every week. We've got one in Derby, it's at Severn Trent. But we're not building, the country isn't building another one every week. There isn't a new one opening. We've got our green waste going to landfill. Some of it's composted, but a lot of it's going to landfill still. And that is really, really bad. It needs to be stopped. We need to be getting value from it. The British homes are notoriously badly insulated. We talk about how good we are. We're putting money into Derby homes. Derby homes properties are now some of the best, most energy efficient rented properties in the city. But there are loads of private properties which don't even meet their standard. We need to be doing a lot more, and we need to go beyond what the standards are that we're currently hitting. We're going to be zero carbon in the target we have by 2035. We've got to do a lot more. So we need to start now. If you go out and want to buy some insulation, a lot of it's imported. We're not making enough in the UK, so we need a plant here in Derby. If you want to put PVs on your roofs, most of those are imported. We need more of those being made here in the UK. Let's have a plant in Derby. If we want to have these things installed, we need people with the right skills. We need to make sure that here in Derby, people can be trained to do those, get those right skills, and be trained to know what to look for when they are the one who is wanting to invest in their house and make their house better, or they're investing on behalf of the business that they are working for. So we need the materials, we need the skills, we need to do that for our economy in Derby. And those are the longer term things that we need to do. But if we're going to do this, we need to be working together. And that is the other part of this. It is the action to say, let's take action together. Let's tell other people what we're doing and hope that they will follow our example. The deadline for these motions rushed up, certainly it rushed up to me, as the country began mourning the death of the Queen. And I therefore hope that others in the chamber whom I might have consulted with more closely on this motion, because I want it to be a cross-party motion, will forgive me for having not done so. It didn't seem right at that point to be phoning people up and asking them. I apologise. I hope that you will nonetheless support this motion and do your best to deliver the changes needed for Derby, the UK and the world. It will take all of us helping in all the ways we can to do this. Thank you.
Councillor Lonsdale, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I'll reserve my right if that's okay.
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm surprised that Councillor Kerr, as one of the 4 climate champion representatives of this council, has come forward with this rather ill-thought-through motion, particularly in light of the fact that she is aware, and acutely aware, of the council's city climate strategy, which is currently being drawn up. I would have hoped that in your role, you would have encouraged a more collaborative cross-party approach rather than one that seems to be for more political benefit rather than environmental ones. Your motion mentions turning off decorative lighting and other lighting not related to safety. Who would be the judge of that? You? And would you stand by that decision in the event of an incident occurring after any switch off? Are we also to assume that the Lib Dems are cancelling Christmas, as Christmas lights would absolutely fall into your category of decorative lighting? Then we have the resetting of thermostats in offices and public buildings. Does this include care homes or public buildings that may be used by the elderly or children? Are you asking for schools to turn down the temperature on our children? We also have the enabling of staff to continue to work from home where possible. It would seem that the Lib Dems want to have our city centre empty and plunged into darkness, which is not really consistent with our regeneration and economic recovery. Councillor Kerr, you know full well that many of the asks in this motion are out of our control and ones that we can only recommend at best. This motion absolutely lacks any teeth and would do little to encourage businesses to make the right choices. I'm really unsure as to the real motives around this motion, as it lacks clarity, intent, and actually insults the intelligence of members of this chamber. It certainly ignores the consequences that some of these actions would have, not only on how our city is perceived, but with regards to it being a vibrant, thriving place to work, visit, and invest. But most importantly, is potentially putting our residents at risk and inviting crime into what could be blacked out corners of the city. There is a cohesive, considered, and hopefully cross-party approved city climate strategy on its way. And I would encourage all members to play their part in its preparation and get behind its delivery. The only light, Mr. Mayor, that needs turning off is the one on this very poor offering from members that should know better. I would normally comment about lights being on and no one being home, but I'll leave that to the rest of the chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe that the intentions behind this motion are good, but as the Cabinet Member for Community Development, Place and Tourism, I've got to question what the outcomes of elements of this motion would mean for our city. Turning off decorative lighting of buildings and other lighting not related to safety. Not related to safety. What does that mean? And as Councillor Hassel points out, who would be the judge of that? Lights around the exterior of the council house may not be considered related to safety. But from the people that I've spoken to, some of whom live within the remit of the city centre, those lights make that area feel safer. Presumably under the Lib Dems motion, they would be off. Same for lights on other council hereditaments, off. Would we be encouraging our partners at Derbion and at the Cathedral to turn the lights off? How dark would that make the city centre for people who live there and walk through it then? I flag the same concerns around asking shopkeepers to turn off display lighting between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. On my drive here today, I drove past the Smalley Drive precinct in my Oakwood ward. If you turned off all the lights at 10 p.m, the only light that would presumably remain there is the light of the ATM. That's a prime opportunity. And I drove through the Meteor Centre with the car sales premises. I doubt they're going to be very keen to turn the lights off when there's millions of pounds of product on the forecourt. And are we talking about just shopkeepers, or are we trying to turn the lights off of businesses that may still be open at that time and deprive them of their trade, like the city centre would need that? And again, in certain areas of the city centre, for individuals who walk through the nighttime hours and early morning, including the students that are new to our city, including young individuals, including vulnerable individuals, including intoxicated individuals, these lights keep the areas illuminated and help them feel safe. I was walking down around the spot yesterday. If you turned off the lights there, regardless of the ones that are there for safety, it significantly darkens the area. And some of these lights can be vital for our CCTV operators to be able to pick up on incidents and alert policing colleagues. So, again, we shouldn't be turning those ones off. So those are huge safety concerns around lights that may not be intended for safety, but provide a safety benefit that I just don't think the Liberal Democrats have thought through. Turning back to the original point around prohibiting the use of decorative lighting, which Councillor Kerr, you incorrectly said we wouldn't be using. We do realise it's Christmas in less than 100 days, right? So is this what a Liberal Democrat Christmas looks like? No Christmas light switch on, which if you speak to businesses in the city centre, they'll tell you how important that is, but no light switch on because it's decorative. No decorated Christmas tree in the city centre, no Christmas trees in our wards, because they're decorative. No window displays in the businesses in the city centre, and again in our wards, because they're decorative. No festive illuminations, because they're decorative. Talk about the Scrooge mentality. Jingle bells, jingle, vroom, Lib Dem blackout. Additionally, in the last few weeks, we've illuminated the Council House and the A52 bridge in support of Ukraine and to commemorate the memory of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Liberal Democrats, would you not have done that? And another business I've flagged that as a concern which has a shop there is petrol stations. Would we be asking them to turn their lights off as well? And God forbid what would happen if we did that. Congratulations. Mr. Mayor, after 2 of our last 3 Christmases in the city were hit by COVID-19, businesses in the city need a strong Christmas offer, and that's what this Cabinet intends to provide through our work and through the regeneration efforts Councillor Hassell's mentioned. And as dark nights draw ever closer, residents and visitors to our city and the city centre and the outskirts of our city centre in our wards need to be able to walk around without it being completely pitch black, aside from lights that may be intended for safety. The one thing I will guarantee, or the one thing I'm absolutely certain of, let's get the wording right, the one thing I'm very, very sure will happen, is if we start darkening our city centre, turning off as many lights as we can, we will reduce the energy consumption of our city centre, because we'll kill it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Shanker.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So fuel costs, potential shortages of fuel, our carbon footprint, all very serious and worrying issues for residents, businesses, volunteer groups, the council, other statutory bodies in the public sector. And I just feel that given this council's declared a climate emergency, we've set up a climate commission now, I think referred to as the Green Board, who have been tasked to develop a strategy. We need to give that body the time to thoughtfully look at the issues, make some recommendations, assess the impact of those recommendations, and then maybe bring that strategy back to council to debate, and then we can agree it, because these are serious issues which need that level and that degree of interrogation and scrutiny before we make a decision. And no, I'm not going to stand here and bash Councillor Kerr, or indeed the seconder of this motion, Councillor Lonsdale, who hasn't even spoke on the motion yet. So I'd ask them to actually withdraw this motion, let the Green Board do its work, and drive that work through the Green Board if they feel it's not happening quick enough, which, you know, my group shares some concerns on that. You know, use their collective knowledge on that board, drive that work through, make it happen quicker, and bring considered proposals back to council for us to then debate and agree. Councillor Kerr, in fairness, has admitted the motion has been rushed, and it's evident it's been rushed. I'd say it's rather sporadic as well. There's a number of specific elements to the motion which I can't really add much more to what Councillor Eyre has said. They're very specific. There's lots of other issues not being mentioned in this motion, and that's why we, suggested we have a board to look at these issues. It talks about setting thermostats at 20 degrees. What about those people who can't afford to get to 20 degrees, let alone reducing the temperature in places? We've heard about Christmas and the potential impact on Christmas, a very important festive period for everybody, and just cancelling Christmas or enjoying Christmas without lights on, it just doesn't feel right to me. And there may be a compromise to be had on times. What about shops that are open beyond 10 p.m? I don't think it's going to be pretty safe to say shops you can open, but you can't have any lights on after 10 p.m. These are all minor issues which I'm sure, assessed properly, sound proposals and compromises can be reached. But this isn't the way a admittedly rushed motion, the full council, to legislate or even issue guidelines on some important issues like this isn't the way these things should be done. Let's get our representatives, as cross-party representatives on the Green Board, let's get them to work better together, work quicker. Absolutely, let's drive this home and make these recommendations quicker with a grown-up joint strategy. But the way, I'm afraid to say, to do this and handle this really important issue on a number of fronts isn't by a motion here tonight, when these matters aren't properly considered and the impacts mitigated against. So I'd actually urge the Liberal Democrats on this occasion to withdraw this motion. Let's do the work and then bring it back in the future.
Any other speakers before I go to Councillor Lonsdale? Right. Councillor Lonsdale, your chance to second.
Thank you. I will be brief. Yes, this motion was rushed and it could do with some more work, but we will not be withdrawing it. We'll be asking you to support it still, because what it does is it turns down the lights so that we can work on saving the gas that we need to save to keep the rest of the lights that we leave on, because a lot of lights are left on with this motion, including the Christmas lights. They can still come on, and the Diwali lights and all the other winter festival lights can still be put on with this motion. But the rest of the lights, it's a sensible motion that requires people to think about their usage of energy in the city. Nobody would say if a shop is open after 10, they should turn all their lights off so no one can see what they're buying. But turn your lights off in your businesses is a fairly sensible thing when businesses are struggling with their energy costs. Nobody would say that we should turn off the lights that keep people safe. That's one of the things that we discussed at length. But our motion doesn't do that. It excludes lights that are there for safety. So I would say support this motion and do more, because it is really urgent that we actually act now, not sometime in the future.
Councillor Kerr to sum up.
Thank you. I'm really disappointed because people have not been taking this motion in the way it needs to be taken. There's reference to it being a really important issue. It's a reference to the fact that we need to have speed of action. There is frustration about the lack of the arrival of the Green Board to take over from the Commission, which has not done anything. We haven't yet been shared. The climate change strategy has not actually been shared publicly with ourselves as climate champions. We know it is being written behind the scenes somewhere, but we haven't yet seen it. We are not getting action on climate, but even more important than the action on climate is the action that we're taking for this coming winter. If lights are going out, if we have those blackouts, which the Prime Minister has promised we won't have, but if we have them, it will be because we haven't taken action to prevent them. And that action needs to be taken by all of us. There isn't enough time for that action to be taken by the government unless it's to plan the blackouts in some way that is less damaging than random blackouts. I am really sad at the way people have not taken this in the way that it should have been accepted. We can look at our Christmas lights, we can turn them off between 1 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning and save. We have got a budget hole of more than £500,000 on our lighting for this year. We aren't going to fill that very easily. Where are we going to get? I've saved £1,000 by saying we're going to turn off our IT system here. But we've got to do 500 times of that. We haven't any ideas how we're going to do it. And if you ridicule the idea of being able to turn off a single light in the city because it might cause some harm to somebody, because I haven't defined which are the safety ones and which of them are not safety ones, I'm not qualified to do that. But we have people in this council who are qualified, who can make those judgments, who can assess what we've got, and they can do it. There is lots of experience of this from other councils. Where I was on holiday this year in Pembrokeshire, the lights went out where we were staying at 12 o'clock, midnight. Most people have a mobile phone. People know how to get a bright light from their mobile phone. They know how to use it as a torch. They managed to get home safely. Warwickshire turns out its lights. It's been doing so for, well, 8-10 years. They leave them on in cities, in town centres. They leave them out on at road junctions, but they are still saving significantly. If we aren't prepared to look at how we can save, we won't be making the savings that we need. And at the end of this year, end of this quarter, end of next quarter, the message that we get will get dire and more dire. But this motion is actually about the safety of our people if we have unplanned blackouts because we have not taken action to reduce our energy when we could have done. If we aren't prepared to think about it, then that is the message we're saying to our residents. We don't care. We don't mind what happens to you. We're not prepared to plan ahead, and we're not prepared to look at this thing, that our responsibilities in a holistic manner. I am really disappointed, but I'm not entirely surprised.
Those in favour of the motion, please show. Those against, please show. That motion is defeated. I sometimes think that I've seen things coming round again to hit me. And I was around in Derby in the 3-day week in 1973-74. There was no electricity in pubs. There was only hand-pulled beer, coal fires and candles. And, you know, the television went off at 10 o'clock and there was a population boom. And it brought down the Tory government. not for me, no, but it had some fun. But it did bring down the Conservative government. So one wonders what the Lib Dems are trying. That brings the business of today's meeting to a close. Thank you for your participation.